Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation, my brothers and sisters, where right and left come to be reasonable. Habemus papam. We have a pope. And I have a very interesting detail about Leo XIV that happens to be true, as opposed to all the projections that are being put onto this man. And I have heard no one discuss it yet, which shocked me until I realized, yeah, of course not, because our obsession is division. So instead of Habemus papam, it was Habemus a problem, right? Because we're so addicted to everything being a litmus test that even the Pope didn't get a pass from our crazy party politics. The MAGA minority trying to paint Leo as a commie, basically calling him an enemy because of his tweets criticizing anti-migrant policies that were unearthed. And perhaps even more twisted to me was how many on the left were asking me, do you think Trump will take credit for the first American-born pope? It's like, you talk about, Trump derangement syndrome. Why would you be worried about that? Why? How could that be what comes into your head when you hear that a guy who was born in America is the first pope to be born here? Let me just clarify a couple of things about papal conventions. I've been studying my faith as a function of its role in journalism and conflicts and the papacy literally for decades, all right? Just because Father Robert Prevost was born here does not mean he shares American Catholics' concerns about modernizing the church. In fact, from what he has said about, let's say, celibacy or allowing women to take higher roles, there's no reason to believe anything's going to happen on those fronts any more than happened with Bergoglio when he became Francis and people expected something. Now, as for him expressing compassion as a priest for the suffering of migrants all over this world, what do you expect a Catholic priest to say, let alone a pope? And it doesn't matter what he trafficked in on Twitter before, because like his predecessors, we can expect that the institution of the church will wind up influencing the pope more than the other way around. In other words, now that Prevost is Leo XIV, he's going to be different than he was before. And that makes sense, as we saw again with Father Bergoglio when he became Pope Francis. Now, this idea that the new pope is an acolyte of the previous one, that his papacy is going to be an extension of Francis's, is also getting ahead of the situation. If the new pope were so enamored of his predecessor, why didn't he do the only thing that we heard in public from Pope Francis about what he hoped for his successor? That he would take the name John the 24th, an extension of John the 23rd, known as the Good Pope, the Reformer, the Pope who brought us Vatican II, and lamented that it never produced the changes he'd hoped. All this noise has ignored the notion that there is actually very good news in what we know about this Pope, even if you don't care about the religious nature of the selection. Even if you are a-religious, you must understand a pope has tremendous political influence on this planet. So it should matter to all Americans in particular that there is something about the pope that matters very much to what's happening in America right now. In fact, I would say the timing is almost divine. And again, I am not talking about the fact that he was born here. I'm really surprised that I haven't heard anything about this. The first move from Father Prevost was, of course, picking his name, right? And in not choosing who Francis wanted him to, he picked a namesake that suggests real implications about what he will think about what's happening in this country in this moment. So the new pope, as you know, is Leo XIV. You probably really haven't heard much about Leo XIII. He was picked back in the late 1800s, crossed over into the 1900s. He happened to have had a very long papacy. I think it was like 25 years or more, and Prevost is also expected to have a long one because he's not even 70 years old. So what is Leo XIII best known for? Fair to say a single encyclical, which is like a pope paper, all right? Like only they write encyclicals. And it's called the Rerum Novarum. What does that mean? In Latin, it means of new things, the new things. And what was new for Leo? For Leo XIII, what was new, what was worthy of an encyclical, meaning this became church policy, happened to be a focus on exactly the main issue on the table in American politics right now: the fundamental relationship between workers and employers. More specifically, the rights and duties of capital and labor is what he laid out. And the church teaching was on the importance of balancing economic interests of the moneyed few with the dignity of the majority working class during the Gilded Age. And remember, Trump has said he believes that we were strongest when? The Gilded Age. Now, he happens to be wrong, and Pope Leo XIII agrees with me, and that because it's obvious to most, and that's why he wrote the encyclicals to correct what was happening in the Gilded Age, which was what? As there was a boom of manufacturing, there started to be a distancing of those controlling the capital versus those making those with capital money. A spot-on conversation that Trump has either intentionally or unintentionally brought into our own national dialogue. Even if Trump's tariff ploy were just a muscular but mindless power play to show MAGA who's the boss in this world, it put the focus on what should matter most to the majority in this country: the balance of burdens and benefits between the corporate class and everyone else, the yawning chasm of income inequality. Now, I've never given President Trump much credit for actually being a populist, because his policies have followed the trend of benefiting the corporate class over the majority. But right now, he is dancing at least with the idea of changing how we do things, taxing the rich. He's dancing with it. He's giving excuses not for it to happen, and he's trying to blame the left for why it won't happen. But he's talking about it. A real middle-class tax cut, meaning it's paid for with cuts in spending and raising taxes on the rich. He even said earlier, before backing away from it, but at least he's talking about it, that's what I'm trying to say, that if the corporate class is taking a beating in the markets, he doesn't care if it means better outcomes and deals for workers in the majority. So look, you can criticize Trump's apparent lack of strategy and blunt force tactics with the tariffs, and we are yet to see whether they are helpful or hurtful, if he gets better deals because of them or despite them, whatever. The balance of economic benefits and burdens and who gets access to the American consumer market and under what terms is huge, and it's exactly what Leo XIII was talking about. See, that's why I keep cautioning Democrats, stop with the Trump sucks. Stop with everything he's doing and trying is wrong, because you're making people believe that you don't care about his goal, which is your signature issue: doing better for the working class. So get in the business of better ideas instead of just Trump sucks, because we just got a lucky break. It seems like those who want America to keep focusing on this issue just got a major ally, because the Pope's namesake not only said that societies had to be careful to not allow the interest of the corporate class of the few to outweigh the many, he took time to say that the enemy of this balance was partisan fringe interests. What are the chances? Pope Leo XIII called out the fringes on the right, the extreme capitalists, and the left, the socialists. Look it up, okay? Rerum Novarum, Rerum Novarum. The great mistake is to take up with the notion that the wealthy and the working men are intended by nature to live in mutual conflict. So false is this view that the direct contrary is the truth. Each needs the other. Capital cannot do without labor, nor labor without capital. Mutual agreement results in the beauty of good order, while perpetual conflict produces confusion and savage barbarity. This is why I am excited about the new pope. Forget about the fact that I'm a Catholic. I forget about where he comes from. But in what he has indicated early on about where he wants to go in this role. This is the first time in my career, right, which is getting on 30 years, that the main issue on the table in American politics is what can be done with our internal and external policies to address the yawning gap of income inequality that is a catalyst for so much of the division, because the division is manufactured. Why? To take advantage of that angst, of that grievance. The parties, the magnified minorities on social media, all of it is designed to harness this fundamental discontent without having to do anything about it, because it's hard to do anything about it. That's what the culture wars are. That's what the gotcha game is, and owning and all the pretension. It's all to take the fact that they know why you're angry and they want to direct it into something else so that they can divide the majority and get us making decisions about who's in power that may play against your own interests, because you're choosing on the basis of what the people look like who play sports against your daughter instead of what the prospects look like for your daughter's life going forward. Who has the best ideas to get the money in this country to a better position of balance, where it's not only about the few? That should be really exciting, especially if the Pope takes his legacy in earnest and wants to weigh in on that. Not as socialism. Leo XIII criticized socialists. We will never be that here, no matter what Bernie and AOC want. So that's why I'm excited. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.